The story begins not with a scream, but with a laugh, a genuine, carefree laugh that echoed off the cold, indifferent stone of the Black Spine Peaks. That's how it always starts, isn't it? Before the dread, before the cold sweat, there is warmth, there is light. My name is Leo, or at least it was. I'm recording this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to understand that the line between our world and something much, much older is thinner than the ice on a January puddle. And sometimes all it takes is one wrong step to fall through. It was New Year's Eve, not the glossy, champagne-soaked celebration you see in movies. For me and my 3 closest friends, it was an escape, a rebellion against noisy parties and forced cheer. Alex, the planner, the adventurer with a map for every occasion, proposed it. A summit BBQ, cook steaks at 8,000 feet, watch the first sunrise of the year, paint the world in gold. It'll be epic. The group was small, tight-knit. There was Alex, all confident smiles and practical gear. Maya, the skeptic with a heart of gold and a camera always slung around her neck, determined to find beauty in everything. And Jake, the gentle giant, my oldest friend, whose quiet strength was the anchor of our little crew. Then there was me, the writer, the one who documented our adventures, always looking for the story. We set off in Alex's rugged 4x4, the trunk laden with supplies, a portable grill, thick steaks, a cooler of drinks, and enough warm clothing to survive a blizzard. Or so we thought. The drive up the mountain road was filled with our usual banter, jokes about past misadventures, plans for the coming year, Maya's playful complaints about the cold. The sky was a clear, hard blue, the sun brilliant but offering no real warmth. The pines stood tall and dark, sentinels watching us ascend into their domain. We reached the designated clearing by mid-afternoon. It was perfect, a flat, rocky outcrop that offered a breathtaking, dizzying view of the valley below, already shrouded in late afternoon shadow. We set up camp with practiced efficiency. Jake gathered firewood from the perimeter of the clearing, dry, brittle branches that snapped with satisfying cracks. Alex assembled the grill. Maya, as always, was framing shots, her camera clicking softly, capturing the stark beauty of the alpine landscape. I helped where I could, but mostly I breathed in the thin, sharp air, feeling a profound peace settle over me. This was it. This was the clean slate the new year promised. The BBQ was, as Alex promised, epic. The sizzle of meat over charcoal, the smell of smoke and seared fat mingling with the crisp scent of pine. It was a primal, joyful feast. We ate as the sun began its rapid descent, painting the sky in violent streaks of orange and purple. We toasted with hot chocolate spiked with whiskey, our cheers swallowed by the vast, silent emptiness around us. That was our first mistake. We mistook the silence for peace. We didn't understand it was a held breath. The second mistake was time. We lost track of it, wrapped in our bubble of friendship and firelight. The sunset, so spectacular, had been our warning clock. By the time we'd packed up, doused the fire with meticulous care, and loaded the car, full darkness had fallen. Not city darkness, with its orange glow and distant hum. This was an absolute consuming blackness, the kind that presses against your eyeballs. The headlights of the 4x4 carved 2 frail tunnels of light into the void, illuminating the gravel road and the endless wall of trees on either side. "No worries," Alex said, his voice too loud in the quiet cabin. "I've got the route memorized. We'll be down in 90 minutes tops."
For the first 30 minutes, all was well. The road twisted and turned, familiar from our ascent. Then we hit the patch of ice, a shadowy stretch of road that had melted in the afternoon sun and refrozen into a sheer black mirror. Alex cursed, fighting the wheel, as the back end of the vehicle slid with a sickening, graceful laziness. We didn't crash, but when we came to a stop, the nose of the 4x4 was pointed at a solid bank of snow pushed up by a plow days earlier, and one back wheel was half off the road's crumbling edge. A collective silence filled the car, heavier than the darkness outside. We got out to assess the damage. The cold was a physical assault, stealing the breath from our lungs. Our flashlight beams danced over the scene. The car wasn't badly hurt, but it was stuck, properly, stubbornly stuck. "We can dig it out," Jake said, his voice calm. "Use the traction mats." We tried. For an hour we labored under the indifferent gaze of a billion stars. We dug, we pushed, we laid down the mats. The tires spun, whining against the ice, throwing up a spray of dirty slush. Nothing. The mountain was holding us. That's when the first thread of unease began to weave itself into our resolve. The wind picked up, moaning through the pines, a sound that was suddenly less like song, more like a lament. Maya, who had been quiet, spoke up. "Guys, my phone has no signal at all." A quick check confirmed it. All of us, no bars. The digital tethers to our world had been severed. We were truly alone. Panic is a quiet thing at first. It starts in the gut, a cold, squirming sensation. Alex, trying to maintain control, consulted his physical map under the dome light. "There's a ranger station marked about 3 miles down this road, maybe a bit more. If we can get there, we can call for a tow, or at least wait for the morning." The alternative, spending the night in the freezing car, was unthinkable. The heater would drain the battery, and the cold would seep in, deadly and patient. A walk was the logical choice, the only choice. We bundled up, taking only essential supplies, water, a first aid kit, the remaining food, and every flashlight and headlamp we had. With one last longing look at the feeble shelter of the vehicle, we set off on foot. Our boots crunched on the gravel, the sound absurdly loud in the immense quiet. Our flashlight beams were pathetic, childish things against the ancient dark of the forest. We walked in a tight group, our breath pluming in the icy air. The road seemed longer, stranger in the dark. Familiar landmarks from the drive up had vanished, swallowed by the night. After what felt like an hour, Alex stopped, his face illuminated from below by his headlamp, making his confused frown look grotesque. "This is not right. The bend here should lead to a bridge over a creek. But the creek's there," he pointed his light to the right, where the faint gurgle of water over rocks could be heard, "and the road, it just goes left, away from it." We had missed a turn. Somewhere in the dark, on a road that supposedly had no forks, we had taken a wrong path. The realization was a punch to the chest. We weren't just delayed, we were lost. "We should go back," Maya whispered, her voice tight. But going back meant returning to the stuck car, to a hopeless wait. Going forward was an unknown. A vote was taken, a quick, tense exchange of glances. Forward won. The road, though wrong, was still a road. It had to lead somewhere. We followed it as it began to descend, not into the friendly valley, but into a thicker, denser part of the forest. The pines here grew closer together, their branches intertwining to block out the starlight. The air grew still and even colder, if that was possible, and the smell changed. The clean scent of pine sap was gone, replaced by a damp, rotten odor, the smell of decaying leaves and wet, black earth. That's when we saw the first stone. It was just a moss-covered lump at the side of the road, half sunk into the frozen ground. Jake's light swept over it, then stopped. He moved closer, brushing away a crust of snow and ice with his gloved hand. It wasn't a rock, it was a slab, rough-hewn, pitted with millennia of weather, and on its surface, carved in deep, crude strokes, was a symbol, a spiral ending in a hook-like flourish. It meant nothing to us, yet seeing it there, in this forgotten place, filled me with a deep instinctive revulsion. "It's a marker," I heard myself say. "It's a brave marker." Maya raised her camera almost reflexively, the flash a shocking, silent explosion of light in the darkness.
The silence that followed the camera's flash was thicker than the mountain's darkness. It was a silence of comprehension, heavy and cold. We weren't just lost in any forest. We were intruders in a forgotten sepulchre. The ghostly afterimage of those tilted, spiral-marked stones floated in my vision, a phantom army standing guard. "We need to leave," Jake said. His voice, usually so steady, had a new, brittle edge. "Now, we go back the way we came, all the way to the car." But the road behind us was a tunnel of pure black, and the road ahead, while wrong, was still a defined path. The instinct to follow a man-made trail, even into a graveyard, was stronger than the terror of the absolute unknown behind. Alex, his navigator's pride wounded, argued for forward momentum. "A settlement built a graveyard," he reasoned, his breath puffing white in his headlamp beam. "A graveyard this big means there was a community. Where there's a community, there might be ruins, a shelter, better than freezing on the road." It was flawed logic, born of desperation, but we clung to it. Maya didn't speak. She just stared at the screen of her camera, zooming in on the captured image of the spiral. "It's not just a design," she murmured, almost to herself. "It's a direction. The spiral, it pulls your eye inward, to the hook. It's meant to catch something." Her words, quiet as they were, sent a fresh chill through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. We moved on, but the character of our journey had changed. We were no longer hikers seeking a ranger station. We were trespassers. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every groan of a tree limb in the wind felt like a notice of our violation. The ancient road, for it was a road, we realized, its stones occasionally visible beneath the frost and pine needles, began to slope more steeply downward, leading us deeper into a bowl-shaped valley within the larger mountain range. The air grew stiller, the rotten, sweet smell of decay stronger, and the trees changed. The tall, straight pines gave way to older, stranger giants, gnarled oaks and twisted yews, their branches like arthritic bones clawing at the sky. Their trunks were immense, black and shiny with damp in our light, and from their lowest branches they held their terrible fruit. At first I thought they were strange, heavy vines. Then, as Jake's light swept across one, the details resolved. A weathered leather hiking boot. A few feet away, from another branch, the frayed end of a rope, its fibers bleached gray by sun and snow. A little further, a tattered strip of plaid flannel, fluttering like a ghost's pennant. We had stopped walking. Our collective beams of light, trembling now, danced from tree to tree, revealing more. A rusted canteen, a faded backpack, moss growing through its torn fabric. A single small sneaker, child-sized. This was no natural formation. This was a gallery, a collection. What is this place?" Alex's whisper was stripped of all its earlier confidence. Maya's camera was down at her side. She wasn't recording this. Some things shouldn't be captured. "They're offerings," she said, her voice hollow, "or trophies." But I knew. The moment I saw the specific, deliberate way the ropes were tied, the familiar human objects chosen and left, I understood.
The weight of the air here wasn't just from the valley. It was the weight of final, desperate decisions. The silence wasn't empty. It was saturated with the echoes of last breaths. "It's a suicide grove," I said. The words left my mouth and hung in the frozen air, too awful to dissipate. The theory clicked into place with a horrifying finality. The ancient burial ground upstream, a place of ritual and reverence for the departed. And downstream, this grove, a dark twin for those who chose to depart themselves. A place where the veil between worlds was considered thin, where the ancient dead might welcome the newly self-made. Our modern minds rebelled at the superstition, but our primal souls felt the truth of it. This was a charged place, a wound in the world. Jake made a sound, a low groan of denial. "We are not staying here. We run, now, back up the road." Panic, held at bay by a thread, finally snapped. We turned as one, scrambling back the way we had come, our lights jerking wildly, creating a nightmare strobe of gnarled branches and dangling sinister mementos. We ran until our lungs burned with the cold air, until the gruesome grove was behind us. We collapsed, gasping near the edge of the ancient graveyard, the spiral stones now feeling almost welcoming compared to what lay below. That's when we saw the light. Not a flashlight or a star, a soft, hazy orange glow emanating from further down the valley, beyond the suicide growth. It was faint but unmistakable, firelight, reflecting off low clouds or fog. "Someone's down there," Alex gasped, hope flooding his voice. "Who the hell lives down there, next to that place?" Jake shot back, his face pale. "Someone who can help us get out," Alex insisted, the planner reasserting himself. "A hermit, a hunter, anyone with a phone or a vehicle. It's our only shot." The debate was fierce and terrified. The grove was between us and the light. Going back meant a night in the frozen car with a dead battery. Going forward meant passing through that gallery of despair again. But the light was a siren call of civilization. Maya was the deciding vote. She was shivering violently, not just from cold. I can't go back past those trees, not in the dark, but I can't stay here either." She looked towards the faint glow. "If there's a building, even an empty one, it has walls." And so, hearts hammering against our ribs, we did the unthinkable. We re-entered the suicide grove. This time, we didn't run. We moved in a tight, silent cluster, our eyes fixed straight ahead on the path, refusing to let our lights or our attention wander to the macabre exhibits on either side. The silence was absolute, as if the grove itself was holding its breath, watching us pass. The only sounds were our ragged breathing and the crunch of frost underfoot. I felt watched, not by animals, but by a presence that was curious and deeply, unervingly patient. The grove seemed larger on the return journey, the path longer, but eventually the trees began to thin and the orange glow grew stronger, resolving from a general haze into distinct flickering points. We emerged from the last line of twisted yews, and there it was. It wasn't a cabin. It was a manor, a grand decaying relic of a bygone era, built from the same dark gray stone as the mountain itself. It stood 3 stories tall, with a peaked roof where several tiles were missing, like broken teeth. Tall, narrow windows, some boarded over, others gaping blackly, reflected the dancing light that came from within, from what seemed to be the ground floor. A wide wraparound porch had sagged in places, and the double front doors, massive and oak, were slightly ajar. A single wrought iron lantern hung above the entrance, unlit and crusted with rust. It was simultaneously imposing and pathetic, a monument to ambition now being patiently reclaimed by the indifferent forest. The light from within promised warmth, shelter, human habitation, but the sheer wrong placement of it here at the end of the world next to a suicide grove in an ancient boneyard screamed a warning that echoed in my very bones. "Hello?" Alex called out, his voice swallowed by the vastness. "Is anyone there? We're lost. We need help." No answer. Only the soft crackle of a fire,
carrying on the still air. We approached the porch steps, which groaned in protest under our weight. The open doorway was a mouth, warm, dry air, carrying the unmistakable scent of wood smoke and something else, something dusty and sweet, like old parchment and dried flowers, flowed out to meet us. "Maybe they're asleep or out back," Alex said, stepping across the threshold. It was the final, fatal crossing. We followed him in, driven by a need for refuge so powerful it overrode every screaming instinct. The interior was a snapshot of arrested decay, a grand foyer with a staircase sweeping upwards into darkness, tattered velvet drapings, a thick layer of dust over everything, yet the air was warm. And directly ahead, through an arched doorway, a large fireplace blazed with a vigorous, healthy fire, as if tended moments ago. Comfortable-looking, if moth-eaten armchairs were arranged around it. But the empty room was empty. "Hello?" Jake called, his voice echoing through the cavernous halls. Silence. The fire popped and sparked. It was then that my light, sweeping the walls, caught the details the welcoming firelight obscured. The walls weren't just paneled wood. They were adorned, but not with paintings or tapestries. They were lined with bones. Not piled, not clinical, arranged, artistic. A swirling, intricate mosaic of human skeletal parts set into the dark wood, a border of interlocking finger bones, a crest made of pelvic halves. A chandelier in the corner, unlit, appeared to be constructed from spines and rib cages. This was no mere shelter. This was a shrine, a temple built not just near the dead, but from them. And as the horror of that realization dawned on us as we stood frozen in the fire,
The rustling stopped. In the heavy silence that followed, the crackle of the fire was obscenely loud. We stood frozen in the foyer of bone, 4 statues carved from pure terror. Our lights, now seeming like beacons announcing our presence, were trained on the grand staircase where the sound had originated. The darkness at the top was absolute, a solid wall of black that seemed to drink the light. "It could be an animal," Alex whispered, the lie brittle on his lips. "A raccoon or a bird got trapped." No animal made a sound like that. It was a slow, deliberate scrape, a dry shuffle, the sound of something that had forgotten how to walk properly. Maya's hand found mine in the dark, her fingers ice-cold and trembling. Jake had moved instinctively in front of us, his large frame tense, ready for a threat he couldn't see or understand. The initial relief of finding shelter had curdled into a nausea of dread. We were inside the beast's belly. "We should leave," I said, the words barely a breath. "Right now, back into the cold." But the memory of the freezing wind, the suicide grove, the endless hungry dark outside held us in place. The fire was warm. The house, for all its horror, was a barrier against the elements. It was a devil's bargain, and we were accepting it. "Let's just stay by the fire," Alex said, his eyes still glued to the staircase. "We don't go exploring. We wait for dawn. First light, we run, no matter what." It was a plan, a fragile one. We edged into the room with the fireplace, giving the bone mosaics a wide berth. The warmth was undeniably comforting, a physical sedative on our frozen skin. We sank into the dusty armchairs, not caring about the clouds of motes we raised. We positioned ourselves so we could all see the foyer and the staircase. We kept our lights on, pools of defiance in the room. For a long time, nothing happened. The fire burned. The house creaked and settled with the ancient groans of old timber. The wind outside let out a low, mournful whistle through a crack somewhere. We didn't speak. We just watched the dark. That's when the whispers began. At first, I thought it was the wind again, or the blood rushing in my own ears from fear. But it grew distinct. Not from one place, but from all around us, seeping from the very walls. It was a chorus of faint, papery voices, overlapping, sighing. You couldn't make out words, only the shape of speech, questions, laments, confessions.
It was the sound of the bone mosaics talking, a gallery of whispers from the pieces of people used as decor. Maya whimpered, pulling her knees to her chest. Jake had his hands over his ears, his eyes squeezed shut. "It's not real," he chanted to himself. "It's the wind. It's not real." But it was, and it was getting clearer, as if our presence, our living warmth, was stirring them from their long slumber. I caught fragments, chilling in their banality amidst the horror. "So cold the day I fell. The rope was rough. My daughter's name was... It pulls. The spiral pulls." The last one made my blood freeze. The spiral. The symbol on the graves. Alex stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly on the floor. "We can't stay here. We have to move. Find another room, a closet, anything without these walls." He was right. The whispering was a psychic assault, drilling into our sanity. We grabbed our packs and fled the sitting room, back into the foyer. The whispers seemed to follow us, swirling in the dusty air. The grand staircase loomed, but going up toward the source of the earlier rustling was insanity. We turned to a corridor that led off to the left of the foyer, away from the firelight. Our flashlight beams cut through the thick, dusty gloom. The corridor was lined with doors, all closed. The air here was colder, stale. The whispering was fainter, muffled by wood and plaster, but still present, a distant insect-like hum at the edge of hearing. Jake tried the first door. It was locked. The second opened with a scream of unoiled hinges. The room was a library, or it had been. Now it was a tomb for knowledge. Books lined floor-to-ceiling shelves, but they were swollen with damp, their pages fused into solid moldy blocks. In the center of the room was a large, heavy table, and on the table, arranged with a curator's care, were more bones. But these weren't arranged as art. These were laid out anatomically, as if for study. A complete skeleton, but not clean and white. These were stained, some broken, some with strange dark discolorations. At the head of the table, where a professor might lecture, sat a single yellowed skull. In its gaping eye sockets, someone had placed 2 smooth, river-worn black stones. They seemed to watch us enter. We backed out quickly. The next room was worse. It appeared to be a bedroom, a 4-poster bed with moth-eaten hangings, a dresser with a tarnished mirror, and in the bed, under a thin gray sheet, was a distinct human-shaped mound, the silhouette of a head on a pillow, a hand resting on top of the covers, skeletal and dry. We didn't go in. We just stared from the doorway, our lights converging on that still form. Was it a real body? A prop? The line between the house's decor and its actual contents had vanished. "This is a museum," Maya breathed, her voice raw. "A museum of death. He's collecting." The he hung in the air. The architect, the curator, the thing that rustled. A new sound interrupted us. Not a whisper. Music. Faint, tinny, and terribly out of tune. The sound of an old music box playing a lullaby that was sweet and melancholy and utterly wrong in this place. It was coming from further down the corridor. We should have run the other way, but terror has a perverse logic. It pulls you toward the source of the fear, as if by confronting it you can master it. We moved as one, drawn by the creepy, tinkling melody. The music led us to the last door at the end of the corridor. This one was different. It was newer, made of plain, unpainted wood, and it had a heavy bolt on the outside. The music box melody was definitely coming from behind it. We looked at each other. The unspoken question was clear. Do we open it? Is something locked in? Or was something being kept out? Before we could decide, the choice was taken from us. From the other side of the door, a voice spoke. It was a young woman's voice, thin and frayed with tears, but undistinguishably human. "Please, are you there? Have you come back? It's so dark. The music stopped again." Hope, vicious and treacherous, flared in my chest. We weren't alone. There was another prisoner. "We're here.
Alex said, rushing forward, his hand going to the bolt. "We're lost hikers. We'll get you out." "No, Alex, wait," Jake hissed, but it was too late. Alex threw the bolt and pulled the door open. The room was a small, bare cell. No windows, no furniture except a filthy mattress on the floor. And in the corner, a small, tarnished music box, its mechanism still slowly winding down, the melody dying into a final discordant plink. The room was empty. But the voice came again, now from right behind us in the corridor, the same sweet, terrified tone. "Oh, you are here. I've been so lonely." We spun around. The corridor was empty. The voice giggled, the sound skittering from the ceiling above us. "Come and play." That's when the lights went out. Not just our flashlights, which died as one with a final sickly dimming of their bulbs, but the sense of light. The faint glow from the distant fireplace was snuffed out, as if a curtain had fallen. The darkness was total, absolute, and heavy as a blanket. It was a darkness that had physical weight, that pressed into your eyes and filled your mouth. In that consuming black, the rustling sound returned. Not from upstairs now. It was in the corridor with us, close, the dry, dragging shuffle. And with it, a new smell cut through the dust and decay, the sharp coppery scent of fresh blood, and underneath it, the sweet cloying odor of rotting meat. Something was in the darkness with us, something that had been waiting, playing, and it just turned off the lights.
Panic is a silent explosion. It shreds thought, leaving only raw, shrieking instinct. In that absolute smothering dark, with the rustle and the smell and the ghost girl's giggle echoing from nowhere, we shattered. A scream, I think it was Maya's, tore through the blackness, short and sharp, then choked off into a sob. I heard the heavy thud of a body hitting the wall, then scrambling. Jake roared, a wordless sound of fury and terror, and I heard a door slam violently somewhere to my left. Alex was shouting my name. "Leo! Leo, where are you?" I couldn't answer. My throat was sealed shut by the dark. I was on my hands and knees, the dusty floorboards rough against my palms. The rustling was everywhere and nowhere. It was to my left, then right, then above me, a dry skittering across the ceiling. The sweet, rotten smell was overpowering, making my stomach heave. "Think, you have to move." The command surfaced from the primal soup of my fear. The corridor. We had to get back to the corridor, to the foyer, to the front door. But which way was it? In the disorienting black, I had lost all sense of direction. The house seemed to have shifted, its geometry now malicious. I reached out blindly, my hand connecting with a wall. I used it to pull myself up, then began to shuffle along it, one agonizing step at a time. My breath came in ragged, whistling gasps. I could hear the others, but their sounds were distorted, coming from impossible distances. A choked cry from far away, the thump of a footstep right behind me when no one was there. Then a light. Not a friendly light. A sickly, phosphorescent green glow that seeped from under the door of the room we had just fled, the empty cell with the music box. It painted the floorboards in an eerie, toxic puddle. It was just enough to see the outlines of the corridor again, to see the other doors, the way back toward the foyer, and to see the figure. It stood at the far end of the corridor, where it met the foyer, silhouetted against the faint, now visible archway. It was tall, impossibly so, and unnaturally thin. Its shape was wrong, the shoulders slumped at a severe angle, one arm longer than the other, ending in a cluster of what looked like long, bony fingers. It wasn't rustling, it was perfectly still, just watching, a deeper blackness against the gloom. It was the source, the keeper of this gallery of sorrows. A low, wet gurgle echoed from it, a sound that had no business coming from a living throat. It was the sound of mud and stones shifting in a deep well. My legs turned to water. I pressed myself against the wall, willing myself to become part of the bone mosaic, to be invisible. Across the hall I saw Maya, also frozen, her eyes wide and glistening with reflected green light, fixed on the silhouette. Where were Alex and Jake? The figure took a step forward. Its movement was all wrong. It didn't walk so much as unfold, its limbs jerking into new positions with a series of faint, dry pops. The dragging sound was its feet, or what served as feet, scraping across the floorboards. It was coming down the corridor towards us. "Run!" The scream finally ripped from my throat. Maya didn't need telling. She bolted, not towards the foyer and the thing, but back the way we had come, deeper into the house. I followed, sheer animal terror overriding any logic. We passed the library, the bedroom, doors we hadn't tried. The green glow from behind us faded, plunging us back into near darkness, but we could hear it, the steady, relentless shuffle scrape of pursuit. It wasn't running. It didn't need to. It knew we had nowhere to go. We stumbled into a large, cold kitchen from a century past, a giant hearth, cold and filled with ashes, a heavy wooden table, and a door, a back door half off its hinges, leading into the deeper black of the night. "Outside! Go!" I shoved Maya toward it. We burst out into the freezing air. It was a shock, but a clean one after the house's morbid warmth. We were in an overgrown courtyard, surrounded by the high, dark walls of the manor. The sky was still starless, a vault of black velvet. The only light was the faint reflected glow from the house's windows. And then we saw them, Alex and Jake. They were across the courtyard, near what looked like an old well. They were struggling, but not with the thing from the house. They were struggling with each other. "Let go of me! It's the only way!" Alex was shouting, his voice hysterical. He had something in his hand, glinting dully, a long, rusted kitchen knife he must have found inside. Jake had him in a bear hug from behind, trying to wrestle the blade away. "You're not thinking, Alex! Look at it!" Jake grunted, straining. I followed Jake's gaze to the well, and I understood. The spiral symbol from the graves was carved on the well's capstone. But it was more than a carving. It seemed to pulse with a faint dark light of its own, a hypnotic, swirling void that pulled at your eyes, your mind. It promised an end, a cessation of the fear, the cold, the horror. It was the same pull the people in the grove had felt, magnified 1,000 times here at its source. The house didn't just collect the dead, it cultivated them. The grove was the orchard, the well was the root. Alex, his mind broken by the whispers in the dark and the thing inside the house, was trying to complete the ritual. He was trying to offer himself to the spiral. "No!" Maya screamed. But it wasn't Alex the keeper moved for. As Alex made his fatal commitment, the creature's head swiveled towards Jake, who was stumbling, defenseless between the well and the house. It moved with that terrible, unfolding speed. It was a blur of wrong angles and dry sound. The bone all flashed in the gloom. Jake made a small, surprised sound, a soft oof, as the tool plunged into his side, just below his ribs. The keeper moved back, a gardener pruning a branch. It watched, head tilted. Jake looked down at the handle protruding from his body, then up at us, his eyes wide with disbelief. He took one step, then crumpled to his knees in the frozen weeds. At the same moment, Alex's body fell by the well, the knife clattering on the stone. He didn't move. 2 down, just like that. The keeper turned its empty gaze towards Maya and me. It began its slow, dragging advance across the courtyard. We were trapped. The house behind it, the high walls around us, the well with its hungry spiral. Maya was sobbing, pulling at my arm. Leo, what do we do?" I looked at Jake, who was now lying on his side, breathing in shallow, wet hitches. I looked at Alex, still by the well. I looked at the approaching thing, its all dripping black in the dim light. There was only one horrible, unthinkable path left. "The house," I whispered, my voice alien to my own ears. "Are you insane?" "It's not guarding the house," I said, the realization dawning with icy clarity. "The well, that's the altar. Outside is where it
works. Inside is just its collection, its larder. It might be the only place it doesn't kill us immediately. It was a guess, a terrifying gamble based on the behavior of a spider who doesn't kill the prey in its web until it's ready to feed. The creature was halfway across the courtyard. We had seconds. "Now, Maya, run for the door!" We ran not away from the monster, but diagonally across its path, back towards the open kitchen door. It changed direction to intercept us, its scraping pace quickening. The smell of rot and blood washed over us. We dove through the doorway into the cold, dark kitchen. I turned and slammed the heavy door shut, throwing my weight against it, fumbling for a lock, a bar, anything. There was a heavy iron latch. I slammed it down just as a tremendous impact shook the door, making the wood groan. Another impact, and another. It was out there, pounding, but it wasn't coming in. For now, the door held. We were back in the belly of the beast, but outside, in the courtyard, the real horror was just beginning. Through a grimy window, we saw the keeper return to Jake's motionless form. It didn't look at us again. It had other business. It bent over our friend, and its long, bony fingers began to work. We turned away, but we couldn't block out the sounds. The wet, tearing sounds, the soft, cracking pops. The keeper was adding to its collection.
We didn't watch. We couldn't. But the sounds from the courtyard painted pictures in the dark that were worse than anything our eyes could have seen. The wet, methodical work of it. The occasional brittle snap. Maya retched dryly in the corner of the kitchen, her body racked with silent, shuddering sobs. I leaned my forehead against the cold stone of the hearth, the reality of it crashing down on me in waves. Jake was gone. Alex was gone. The thing outside was processing them. The pounding on the door had stopped. The silence that followed was worse. It was the silence of a predator waiting, sure of its prey. We were trapped in a stone tomb with a single fragile barrier between us and that thing. Dawn felt like a myth, a story told the children. "We can't stay here," Maya whispered, her voice a broken thing. "It'll come in when it's finished out there." She was right. The door wouldn't hold forever, and the house itself was no sanctuary. It was the lair. We had to move. The only direction left was up. "The attic," I said, the idea forming from sheer desperation. "If there is one, a place to hide, a place to wait for light." I didn't say a place to make a last stand. We both knew. We left the kitchen, creeping back into the whispering darkness of the main corridor. The green glow under the cell door had faded. The house was dark and quiet, but it felt different now, charged, as if the violence outside had fed it, woken it up more fully. The bone mosaics seemed to watch us pass with a new, hungry interest. We found the main staircase and looked up into the pitch-black maw of the second floor. Going up felt like walking into a throat, but we had no choice. Each step on the creaking stairs was an announcement of our location. We held our breath, expecting the rustling to start again from the shadows above. The upper floor was a maze of smaller rooms, more bedrooms frozen in time, a dusty nursery with a crib made of woven, blackened branches, a water closet with a cracked porcelain basin. Everything was steeped in the same dreadful aesthetic, bones and dried flora woven into the very fabric of the home, and everywhere the spiral symbol, carved into door frames, etched into window glass, embroidered into rotten curtains. At the end of a narrow hallway, we found a small pull-down ladder leading to a hatch in the ceiling, the attic. The ladder groaned in protest as I pulled it down, raising a cloud of ancient dust. The smell that wafted down was not of decay, but of dryness, of old wood and forgotten things. We climbed up into a space so black it felt solid. Our dead flashlights were useless. We felt our way, hands outstretched, feet testing each step. The attic floor was plank, littered with unseen debris. The roof sloped sharply down on either side, and it was filled with
Things. Objects. We bumped into crates, brushed against hanging shapes that felt like bundles of sticks, but with a wrong, familiar density. Then my hand touched something cold and smooth. Glass. A lantern. And next to it, a box of old wooden matches. With trembling hands I struck one. The flare was blinding. In its sudden dancing light, we saw the attic's truth, and my heart stopped. It wasn't a storage space. It was a workshop. The hanging shapes were not sticks. They were bones strung on wires, being prepared for display. Work tables held tools, small saws, owls, polishing cloths, pots of dark stain. And on shelves, arranged neatly like jars of preserves, were the finished pieces. Skulls cleaned and polished, some etched with the spiral, long bones tied in bundles, vertebrae strung into morbid wind chimes. This was where the keeper practiced its art. But in the far corner, illuminated as my match died, I saw something else. A modern-looking backpack, a bright blue nylon water bottle, a pair of hiking boots, not ancient. We lit the lantern. Its warm, oily light pushed back the shadows, making the horror explicit, but at least visible. We went to the corner. The backpack was dusty but intact. It contained a wallet. Inside, a driver's license for a young man named Daniel Reese, reported missing 2 years ago on a solo hiking trip in this very range. There were photos of him smiling with family. A journal. I didn't want to read it, but I had to. The last entry was a frantic, pencil-scrawled mess. It led me here. The light in the window. I thought it was help. It's not a person. It wears faces. It speaks with stolen voices. It wants you to choose the well. The spiral pulls you in. It's easier to give in. I can't. I won't. I'm hiding in its own house. It doesn't come up here much, only to work. I hear it singing sometimes, with their voices. I have to get out. I have to. The entry ended mid-sentence. Maya picked up a small, bone-handled knife from the work table. Her face was pale, but set in a grim mask. "It can be hurt," she said, her voice flat. "It collects bodies. It needs them. That means it can lose its own." But I was looking past her, at the far wall. There, under the steepest slope of the roof, was a small circular window, a grimy porthole of glass, and through the thick grime I could see the faintest hint of gray light. Dawn. It was coming. "The window," I breathed. Maybe we can get out, onto the roof." Hope, thin and desperate, flickered. We scrambled over, clearing away cobwebs and boxes. The window was latched shut with a rusted clasp. I worked at it with the blade of the bone knife, my hands slick with sweat. It gave with a shriek of metal. Cold, clean air rushed in. The sky outside was not black, but a deep pre-dawn indigo. The world still existed. Below, I could just make out the steep slope of the mansion's main roof, and beyond that, the tops of the twisted trees in the suicide grove. It was a dangerous drop, but it was a way out, a chance. That's when we heard the ladder creak. Something was coming up. We froze, staring at the open hatchway in the attic floor. The slow, dragging scrape was unmistakable. It was in the house. It was coming for its workshop, for us. Maya looked at me, her eyes wide with a final, resigned terror. Then she looked at the lantern, at the dry, bone-littered workshop, at the open window and the hint of freedom. A terrible, calm understanding passed between us. It wouldn't let us leave. It would hunt us onto the roof or drag us back to the well. The only way out was to destroy the collection, to burn its life's work, its reason for being. As the first long, clawed fingers appeared at the edge of the hatchway, I made a choice. I grabbed the lantern. "Go," I said to Maya, my voice surprisingly steady. "Out the window, now." "Leo, no!" "Go." I didn't wait. I turned and hurled the lantern against the far wall, where bundles of dried herbs and cloth lay among the bones. The oil splashed. The flame caught with a soft whoomp. Fire, hungry and orange, leapt up the ancient dry wood. It raced across the work tables, embracing the bones, the tools, the history of horror that should never have been. A sound came from the hatchway, not a rustle, but a shriek of pure, unadulterated fury, a sound that held 1,000 stolen voices within it. The keeper hauled itself into the attic, its patchwork form illuminated by the growing inferno. It ignored me completely. It lunged for the flames, its long arms batting at them, trying to save its precious collection. The flame licked at its tattered clothes, caught on the dry skin. "Leo!" Maya screamed from the window. I turned and ran, scrambling over the burning debris. I followed Maya out onto the steep, icy slate of the main roof. The cold air was a slap. Behind us, the attic window vomited smoke and flame. The entire upper floor of the manor was becoming a torch, a beacon of destruction in the gray dawn. We half slid, half fell down the main roof, catching ourselves on a gutter that groaned ominously. We dropped into the overgrown courtyard, landing in a heap. The back door of the kitchen hung open. We didn't look toward the well. We just ran. We ran past the suicide grove, the dangling mementos now backlit by the burning mansion, casting long, dancing shadows. We ran past the ancient graveyard, the spiral stones seeming to watch the fire with silent approval. We ran up the old road, our lungs burning, our legs screaming, driven by the primal need to put distance between us and that valley. We didn't stop until we stumbled onto the main mountain road, the one that we had lost hours, a lifetime ago. The sky was now a pale, watery gray. In the distance, we heard the beautiful mechanical sound of an engine, a snowplow, starting its early morning route. We were found. We were saved. But not really. They called it exposure, hypothermic-induced hallucinations, a tragic accident where 2 young men, Alex and Jake, lost their way and succumbed to the elements. The authorities found their bodies near an old, collapsed well on a remote part of the mountain. They said animals had gotten to them. The story was neat, believable. The burned-out shell of an old, forgotten...
That's end of the story tonight. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss when a new nightmare begins. Leave a like if you want more horror like this, and tell me in the comments what chilled you the most. Until next time, sleep with the lights on.